Good morning, everybody. Perhaps the very start of a good afternoon to all of you out there. Happy early Thanksgiving. I am Gary Hartman here with you to look not at the Thanksgiving slate, although I hope you have consumed all of our great content at Establish the Run regarding tomorrow's three-game Thanksgiving slate, one that I am very excited for. But sorry about that. Had a little, I feel like my headphones are going in and out here for a second. If you are having issues with audio, please let me know. I can reconnect and connect again. Anyway, yes, here to get a first look at the main. Usually we do this on Tuesday morning. Gave it a push back to kind of clear out the way for all of our content surrounding the Thanksgiving slate. No regrets about that whatsoever. Happy to be here with you though to go through this 10-game Sunday main slate. We're excited about the Thursday slate. Lots of fun contests out there tomorrow on DraftKings and FanDuel. But of course, we still do have a main Sunday slate for you all. Let's dive right in with kind of laying the lay of the land for this main slate. And I got to be honest, it's a somewhat uninspiring one at first glance, only in that no buys, but tons of major teams off this slate, right? Obviously, we have our Thanksgiving teams off this slate: Packers, Lions, Cowboys, Commanders, Seahawks, 49ers. So some firepower there. And then we have a Friday night, Black Friday game of Jets Dolphins. So no Dolphins on this slate, which is always consequential for fantasy purposes. Sunday night are a couple of big fantasy offenses in Ravens Chargers. So no Ravens Chargers on the slate. And then Monday night is Bears Vikings. So a ton of big teams off this slate. When you look at our over-unders on the week, there are a couple games that are intriguing from an over-under perspective. Nothing scratching 50 once again, but we do have Jaguars Texans at 48.5, Bills Eagles at 48.5. Then we go down to Rams Cardinals at 44.5, and one that I kind of think is sneaky in the Buccaneers and Colts is 43.5. What really stood out to me though is that despite there being a couple games in the high 40s there, we do not have many high individual implied team totals, right? The last couple of weeks we've talked about the Dolphins and the Cowboys. The last 2 weeks we're all sitting at that 30 number. The highest we have this week is the Eagles at 25.5, the 49ers at 24.75, the Jaguars at 24.5, the Cardinals at 23, the Colts at 23, the Texans at 23, and then the Bills all the way down to 22, which I find to be interesting and a pretty low number there. So that kind of sets the floor up for this slate. It's one that I think there are still plenty of interesting angles to attack. So we'll talk about all those here. If you're, I know we don't have many live listeners right now, but if you are, let me know if you're getting feedback with my audio. I'll reconnect my headphones real quick if need be. Okay, let's take a look here at quarterback, and looks like Jalen Hurts has surpassed Patrick Mahomes as the top quarterback of the week. Makes sense, and I've been saying this about Hurts for a long time. No one in the entire sport has a higher floor. There are guys that have similar ceilings, or maybe you could say higher ceilings. I think Josh Allen has a weekly higher ceiling. Thanks, Katie. But I do think no one has a higher floor than Jalen Hurts. So that's something to consider here. Home matchup with the Bills. As I mentioned, they have the highest team total on the slate. It's still very hard to pay up at quarterback these days on modern DraftKings pricing. But if you can afford Jalen Hurts, even in a somewhat tougher matchup or environment with Buffalo, I think that's one to do. And I want to talk about, before talking about Mahomes, I want to talk about Josh Allen on the other side of this game right now, because I find this to be an interesting game. And I think the Bills side particularly is an interesting one to attack. Now, every single game that they go through right now is going to be backs against the wall, right? They are not looking to piss away a season of Josh Allen's prime, right? That's why they went and fired Ken Dorsey. They are backs against the wall trying to win every game. The Eagles are on the other side of desperation, right? They just beat the Chiefs here. I'm not saying to go out and bet on the Eagles, but I do think the Bills with a 22 point team total seems a little low to me. So something to consider there. Okay, hold on. I'm just going to try to reconnect and connect real quick. Give me one quick second here. If audio is being a pain. Okay, yes, that should be good. All right, hopefully that's better. Hopefully you guys can all hear me right now. Okay, so yeah, I feel like Josh Allen. Good week for Josh Allen. Tough matchup going into Philadelphia. That's never easy. However, Philadelphia is an offense we've been able to pass on throughout this season. This is backs against the wall. He's the third most expensive quarterback on the slate. Something a little fishy to that 22, but also in our snaps and pace article on Establish the Run, um, this game is one that Thorman is looking to attack. So that's something to consider for sure. Mahomes kind of sitting right in that middle there on the road in Vegas. Theoretical good spot. We haven't seen a ceiling game out of Mahomes in almost going on a month here. Short week also. As I said, theoretical good spot going into Vegas. However, it's Patrick Mahomes. He can go off at any point. The problem here really is the supporting cast because he's throwing the ball a ton. And Vegas certainly looks inspired under Antonio Pierce. This is games in Vegas. If I'm paying up, it's probably not the option I'm going to, but I definitely want some exposure for sure. And then, man, CJ Stroud, he's our fourth most expensive quarterback on the slate. And it's not just like, oh, fourth most expensive quarterback, big teardrop. Nope, he's just right below the big three here at 7-7. And how can you blame price makers? Look at these last 3 weeks: 336, 356, 470. Had another 2 touchdowns, had 3 interceptions this past week, so did make some mistakes, but just running away to the rookie of the year and potentially keeping himself in the MVP discussion. I mentioned this game is tied with that Bills Eagles games for the highest over runner in the week. So again, a hard price tag to get to, but one that I wouldn't completely rule out. Okay, going over to Kyler Murray here. They are now aggressively trying to get his price up after starting him really low. 5,900 he came out of the gate. They brought him to 61, and he just exceeded the game prior, right? One more rush for 20 more rush yards, another rushing touchdown on the ground. And again, this was the concern with Kyler coming back is, hey, can he do these things still? He has proven very well that he can. This Cardinals team is obviously not a good real-life NFL team, but they have proven, whether it's under Josh Dobbs or now Kyler Murray, to be in games week in, week out, to push, to have an up-tempo offense. There's enough here with Kyler, especially at still sub 7K, to be there. All right, Trevor Lawrence actually gave him the credit to be the cover boy of this video. Sorry, I meant Jags. Yeah, Jags. Okay. I meant the cover boy of this video. And that largely is due to just give him some credit to last week, right? We did not know if this guy had a ceiling in him this year. And yeah, he had to get 2 rushing touchdowns to get there, but eclipsed that magical 30-point quarterback score. They priced him up to 400, but this is a really good spot, right? I mentioned Stroud being, putting up huge numbers. A lot of that is because these game environments are ones in which they go back and forth due to the Houston defense. Maybe Trevor Lawrence is finding a stride now. This is in division. Texans are still well alive as well. And the 6,400 tag in a really good matchup is in what is considered to be the highest game total on the week. The Jaguars are third highest on the main slate in team totals. That is a price this week that I'm very willing to attack at 6,400 for Trevor Lawrence. So it's something to consider. I don't know if the field's going to attack it heavily because of how good he was last week and kind of the need for salary potentially, but something to consider. I'm not really interested in this mid tier, right? So it's from T-Law up, I like, and then you can make it. Stafford has shown no semblance of a ceiling this year in DFS. Derek Carr, we don't even know if he's playing. Baker going into Indianapolis. I prefer the other side of that game. We'll talk about that in a second. Russ gets a really tough matchup against the Browns. Will Levis kind of was showing that maybe, hey, that week one from a ceiling perspective was a flash in the pan. At least they get a solid spot at home against Carolina. Browning, I just don't know what kind of ceiling or floor case there is. If I'm paying down, I think I want to go to some of these guys underneath him, right? All right, so you got DeVito, who really was surprising last week. 246 yards, 3 touchdowns in Washington. Now they get home against the Patriots. I don't love this spot for him. Again, if I, Matt's saying Underhill implied Carr was good to go. Okay, which is, very interesting for sure. I'm not that interested in Carr for DFS. I would have been more interested in Jameis Winston. And I do think if Jameis goes, I'm interested in taking some shots at sub 5K on Jameis. But there is a 5K quarterback here that I'm very interested in, and that is Gardner Minshew, okay? Obviously, I'm not saying this is a high ceiling play. It's not necessarily a high ceiling play. However, he flashed a ceiling, and that happened to be in a really tough matchup against Cleveland. The floor is low as well, but this is a really nice spot at home, 5,100 against a Bucs team that can stop the run, but cannot stop a nosebleed through the air, right? So this, I know we only had that 134-point game, right? But I think this is a week where we could finally get somewhere in between these 15, 16s that we've seen out of Minshew when he's just okay and that big explosion game. Yes, we have the risk of single digit points for Gardner Minshew, and especially with Jonathan Taylor start to get himself more acclimated into this offense and they start to build their team more around Jonathan Taylor. But I do like Minshew here quite a bit as my kind of spend down quarterback of choice. You have Aiden O'Connell against a tough Chiefs D, DTR against a Broncos defense that has definitely looked better in the past couple of weeks. So, like, if I'm taking a shot on any of those guys, it is Minshew for me. But one of the few weeks where I'm really looking at this quarterback slate and thinking, okay, I want like Trevor Lawrence or above. So that's why I feel like a lot of chalk's going to end up around this Kyler Murray, Trevor Lawrence here. We'll see how that shakes out. Let's go over to running back where, man, it's so many of the top guys are off the slate. Christian McCaffrey's off the slate. Tony Pollard, Seahawks guys, Lions guys, Breece Hall, Dolphins guys, Ravens guys, Eckler, all off the slate. So that makes for Alvin Kamara to be our most expensive running back in what is a tough matchup, right? The Falcons in Atlanta have a good run defense. And the thing with Kamara has shown very nice floor every single game he's been in since he's come back from suspension. However, the ceiling lies in his pass game, right? Luckily with Derek Carr, if Derek Carr is available, that is where we get these 10, 14 target games is check down Derek Carr, right? So for Kamara's sake, you want Carr in there. And I'd be willing to spend up to Kamara there. But, with how weak the running back position is, I wouldn't mind getting some money saving here, some salary saving at the running back position. Kamara with Winston as the most expensive back by over $1,000. Probably don't have too much interest there in what is not the best natural matchup against Atlanta. Saquon surprised me. I think I said on the show last week, I was not ready to trust any New York Giants right now. I'd rather kind of wait and see. Saquon said, screw that. I'm going to get you 30 points and went out, had a big second half, got over 5 yards a carry. And I said 3 straight weeks of over 5 yards a carry, we should mention. Did get 2 receiving touchdowns. And DeVito and him finding a little bit of a chemistry there through the air. They had goal line packages schemed up for him to get those receiving touchdowns. And, I mean, New England middle of the road matchup for running backs, but that's a good price for Saquon for sure. Going down to ETN, I definitely don't mind attacking Travis Etienne. We've had 2 back-to-back bad weeks, but we had so much consistency between weeks 5 and 8 there with those 30s, 20s, 20s, 20, 20. So I definitely like Travis Etienne in a bounce back spot here against the Texans. And he's down, right in that same spot he's been all year at 7,100. I mentioned I already like Minshew. That puts me in a spot where I don't necessarily love Jonathan Taylor. I still think he's a little bit underpriced for what the ceiling is, but that's a tough matchup against the Bucs. I'd rather attack the pass game. DeAndre Swift, what you needed in that showdown slate on Monday night now gets a pretty good matchup here against the Bills, still under 7K. That's a fine option for you. Josh Jacobs, I don't love that matchup against the Chiefs, but the role is still great. Kieran Williams is going to be back, and this is a guy that was kind of breaking slates prior to his injury. Now has not suited up since week 6. We're in week 12 now. But, he was a full-on workhorse when he was playing. I don't know if they're going to ease him back in at all. He's fully priced for basically, what he was before the injury. But if McVay says screw it and gives him a full load again and close to 20 total touches at 6,600 against a Cardinals team, that's something you want to invest in. Bijan Robinson, finally, Arthur Smith smartened up and gave him a real role, right? He had 23 total touches, 5 yards short of 100 there in Arizona. Only had the 1 touchdown. So, resulted in around an 18-point day and what could have been closer to eclipsing 20. Obviously, we like to see times when Bijan's more involved in the air, but that is still underpriced if the role increase is real. I saw someone in chat saying Derrick Henry week. I'd imagine Derrick Henry is going to be quite popular this week because I do not remember. I guess last week he was 6,300, but I don't remember the last time Derrick Henry has had any kind of consistent DraftKings pricing at this level. 6,400 for Derrick Henry is super, super cheap. Now, he's not being used in the same way under Will Levis, where they're kind of willing to push the ball downfield, and they've been in these spots where they've had to a little bit. But if there's a spot where they can control the clock and they can dictate game script, you got to imagine it's here at home against Carolina. So it's possible we see something like week 8, Derrick Henry will get 22 for 100 on the ground. All that takes is get in the end zone one or two times, and he easily breaks the slate at 6,400. So I'd imagine he's going to be a cash option. It's going to be hard to completely look away from Derrick Henry this week. Mixon has found a floor over the last 4 weeks where he's kind of been right around that 20-point range in the majority of games, and the role remains excellent. But now you have no Joe Burrow, and still a tougher matchup here at Pittsburgh. Just met to me. I don't know what kind of ceiling is there to win me a main slate at this point with the current state of the Bengals. A similar situation with Pacheco, where he had that one huge game against the Jets and has been kind of middle of the road from a stealing perspective with a decent floor. The role is still really good. He's getting a lot of touches. It's a solid matchup with the Raiders. I wish he was in the 5K range, but I don't mind attacking it. James Cook has a tough spot against the Eagles. I'd rather find probably some less money plays or some cheaper plays. Well, less money, some cheaper plays if I'm going to attack running back there. And Rachaad White could be one of those guys who has shown a really nice floor, decent ceiling as well. If you can find the end zone, like in week 9 there against the Texans, this is a matchup that doesn't scare you. He's very much involved in the pass game. Still don't know if I believe in the talent on Rachaad White, but I don't think it really matters. Devin Singletary, though, I don't know if Dameon Pierce is going to be back this week, but I know we were speculating in our internal Slack that I think Singletary probably has the RB1 role at this point either way, right? 2 straight weeks of 52 total carries, yet still averaging over 5 yards a carry. And I get those are pretty good matchups there, especially last week with Arizona. But that is a role that we covet. They've brought him up to 6K. But if we're going to get a role like that still, that's something that we're going to still play even at that number. James Conner, they have not been afraid to give a big role since he's come back. He's now competing with Kyler Murray for high-value rushing touches. That stuff is a little scary. He is still under 6K, though. It's enough to consider. Ramondre, assuming he goes, would be an option against the Giants for sure. The Broncos guys get a tough matchup with the Browns, but you're got to be encouraged with Javonte Williams usage. And I know the Broncos defense has been a lot better, but this is kind of the range where I kind of want to start taking some shots on running back this week, because I think most of our ceiling plays are at the receiver position on this particular slate, which puts Jerome Ford and even Kareem Hunt, if you want to take a shot there, on my radar at 5-6. Jalen Warren absolutely was optimal last week, and I know that was only on 9 carries, but hey, new offensive coordinator, you have to imagine that they will realize that he is the more talented back at this time, someone that they want to get more involved. Matchup with Cincinnati. I just mentioned what Devin Singletary did to them 2 weeks ago. This is certainly a spot where I still think the Steelers guys, including Najee Harris, are underpriced here. So a 4-9 Najee, a 5-4 Warren is something I'm interested in unequivocally. That sounds great. I mentioned Hunt already. Chuba Hubbard against the Titans can make your player pool as well. Kind of start getting to the point where we question the ceiling on some of these other guys. Okay. Interesting spot at running back. I think I'd be okay if you want to do kind of what I was into last week, which ended up being optimal, which was one spend up, one spend down option. But if you need money, if you need to save money, I do think there are a couple plays in that mid-tier and spend down option that can get you 20 plus points. Onto the receiver side, there could be a little bit of a squeaky wheel narrative for A.J. Brown. I know that sounds crazy for a guy that is perhaps in the running for Offensive Player of the Year, but you could tell how frustrated he was in that Chiefs game on Monday night, missed the big play. That probably would have been a touchdown, no fault of his own. He's coming off 2 straight weeks of, I guess, for A.J. Brown down games, considering week 9 was only a 7 for 66, did find the end zone. But this is a guy that was getting, close to 30 points in the majority of his games. Now, this is not necessarily an easy spot against the Bills, but I kind of don't worry too much about that and say, hey, if I can afford it, I don't mind going to A.J. Brown whatsoever. Okay, Stephon Diggs also, you can make a squeaky wheel narrative for back-to-back weeks of 6 DraftKings points. That's nothing for Stephon Diggs. And now, as I mentioned, I'm interested in this Bills side because as hard as the matchup will be in Philadelphia on the road, this is a team that we've been able to throw on throughout the season. Even by DraftKings metric, they are 32nd against opposing wide receivers. That is something that I will not ignore here. 8-8, Stephon Diggs. I definitely like him. Curious where ownership comes in. We are in a tough spot at Ja'Marr Chase now. I think we can group him in to the Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams group, as Mark Dankenbring was saying in our Slack, as far as elite wide receivers now with subpar quarterback play, assuming Jake Browning is not very good. I'll need to kind of wait and see. If I'm spending up, obviously in an MME run, 150 set, I want to get a couple percentage points of exposure to Ja'Marr Chase. But if I'm spending up, hard to want to do that right now with the current state of the Bengals. Cooper Kupp, going to kind of wait and see. Another ankle injury is scary for him. McVay said there's a chance he plays. If he goes, I would tread carefully. I'd probably try to rather get to Puka, who also has a questionable tag. So this whole Rams team's a little bit wait and see. Devontae Adams still far too cheap for this role, but it's a tough matchup against L'Jarius Sneed and the Chiefs. If you're playing a full Chiefs stack, I don't mind including him in correlation or in a mini stack or bring back, whatever, but probably not my one-off play of choice this week. Mike Evans just continues to be a big play threat. Even in week 11 against tough matchup with the Niners, he finds the floor because he finds the end zone. So 7 touchdowns on the season for kind of the ageless wonder. Evans at this point, him and Baker clearly have a chemistry here. 7.4 is fully priced for Mike Evans, but you could consider it. Adam Thielen also still very fully priced here at 7.3, but the role remains really good. We haven't seen the ceiling game since week 6, but the target's still double-digit targets in 3 of the last 4 weeks. That's a little pricey for me, but the matchup doesn't scare you if you do want to attack, say, Derrick Henry or something like that. You want to do mini correlation. Henry's the kind of guy that you can kind of correlate with receivers because when the Titans offense does have success, it's usually on the back of Derrick Henry. So if a team needs to push, it makes sense. It's not as much of a game script thing necessarily to me there. Devonta Smith, this is twice now he's finished with 99 yards on the nose to just come short of that DraftKings bonus. I still think a huge game's coming for Devonta Smith. I'd rather play against the Bills, A.J. Brown, I think, but obviously major price discount to get down to Devontae. They're pricing up Tank Dell, and they finally aggressively priced him up. So they brought him up $1,000. I don't know if it's enough. 30 points in 2 of the last 3 weeks. Guy's an absolute stud. Very clearly CJ Stroud's favorite target, and this is a good matchup. Or a solid matchup. You want to play 6,900 for Tank Dell? I will not argue with you for a second. I already mentioned like Minshew, so that means I really like Michael Pittman, who, by the way, is one of the sneaky highest floor receivers in the entire NFL. He's got one of the best roles. He just goes out there and it's a PPR machine. 8 catches, 9 catches. That's 4 of his last 5 games. He gets double-digit targets in 60, 70% of his games. Just taking a look, he also gets double-digit DraftKings points in all games but 1 so far this year. 6,800 tags seems appropriate for everything I just laid out. Now, I like him if I'm attacking the Minshew side. I don't mind him as a one-off play either. But again, I kind of talked about that Colts-Bucks game being a little bit sneaky. I think Thorman also put that as an up-and-pace play. Obviously, if I'm playing Minshew, I probably want to pair him with Michael Pittman. So that's going to be an option where I never thought I'd be this excited about Michael Pittman, but I do think it's an option on this slate. Olave also just like keeps getting so close to these big games with 6 yards from the bonus, which probably would have put him in optimal consideration at only 6,400. I know I made him my pick of the week on my other podcast, Look Who's Chalking, in week 10. That was before the bye, so we're talking 2 weeks ago. They bring him up $200 against Atlanta in the Dome. There's a possibility of going off there. So Nico now goes down below Tank Dell, and I get it. We did see where I mentioned we had 2 of the last 3 games have been 30 points games for Tank Dell. We saw that in the first 4 weeks of the season with Nico Collins, where 2 of the 4 games were 30-point games. We are in full-blown wide receiver 1 territory for Tank Dell, though. So we have to look at Nico Collins now, I believe, as the second pass-catching option in the Texans offense, and that's not even considering the fact that Dalton Schultz has seen a rise in role and production as well. So I think 6,400 is probably fair for Nico. If I'm attacking this Texans side, I'll get him in where he fits in my builds, but I do prefer Dell at this point. Godwin, I just don't trust any kind of ceiling at this moment for the Tampa Bay offense. T. Higgins is going to be questionable here once again, and again with Jake Browning, who knows. Calvin Ridley finally goes off there in week 11. Weird things that he performs. Wednesday Jones is on the field, had a big game, 34 points, 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. I still very much believe in this talent. They did now 5,400. We knew that was the price we wanted to attack on Ridley. I still think 6K is very much in that tier as well. So, feel free to do that. Ton of guys down here you can take shots on. I don't know if I trust the Cleveland pass game with DTR, but if you want to take a shot on Amari Cooper, that's fine. Christian Kirk, still probably underpriced for his ceiling on the Jaguars offense. If I'm playing Chiefs receivers, Rashee Rice is really the only guy I have interest in. Cortland Sutton just seems to find the end zone all the time. He's got 8 touchdowns on the year, even with having minimal production from a yard standpoint. So, something that at this point he's just sun running with touchdowns to consider that. Gabe Davis and Khalil Shakir. I'm not going below the 5K guys, but Shakir at this point is very firmly established himself as a wide receiver 3 there in Buffalo. So I mentioned being interested in the Allen stacks. I think that would be a play for you. Marquise Brown still way underpriced and did disappoint for 3 straight weeks now as a cash option. I think once again he's going to pop there though. Then you got Drake London sitting right at 5K. Someone that I still like to always consider for tournaments. Anything under 5K, check out cheap wide receiver volume. I'll be trying to get that up tonight because obviously want to get it up before Thanksgiving. All right, tight end quickly. We have Travis Kelce and everyone else. Travis Kelce, 8-2. We'll see if Taylor Swift's going to be in attendance. I kid, kind of. He's been much better with her there. Did save his day on Monday night with the touchdown. Had 9 targets. Like, this is still an excellent play. If you're playing Mahomes, I do want to figure out to get a Mahomes-Kelce stack. It's very expensive, but I want to figure it out. It's risky because it's a tight end. You're paying 8-2 for, so you're paying elite wide receiver and running back prices. Think about it. He'd be the second most expensive running back on the slate. And, every now and then you're going to get a 5-point game because it's still a tight end. But you also get 40s a couple of times a season. So I don't have an issue with Travis Kelce. Dalton Schultz, now the second most expensive tight end. I mentioned that he's become a bigger part of this kind of prolific Texans passing game. So I understand that price. Kincaid, though, I prefer at 53. As you can tell at this point now, 5 straight games with double-digit points, has really firmly established himself as a top target in Josh Allen's offense. Taysom Hill is someone that I like to consider in my tournament runs. He's fully priced, though, at 5K. I get that he goes right for him every now and then, and he's a threat to catch one. He's a threat to run in. At 5K, it's a little bit tough for me to get there. I don't think Goddard's going to play. Keep an eye on that one. McBride, they have now aggressively gotten up to 4.7. We were talking about him as only 3.5 just 2 weeks ago. He was started back in the 2, so he's now getting up there as one of the most expensive tight ends on the slate. But you get it; he's being used really, really well. I still think he's going to be in play. Ingram for us every single week pops as a cash game option. He's like leading the league in targets and air yards and top 5 and all these metrics for a tight end. And I get it, and I like the data, I like the math, but we have not seen too many ceiling games from Evan Ingram. We had an 18-point game there in week 8 where he had 10 for 88. I think it's in there, and if I'm attacking Trevor Lawrence, I will just be using him in different types of double stack iterations as I normally would, but I'm not going to be as excited as ownership's going to project here for Ingram just because the underlying stuff is there. I want to see the production. Njoku gets an elite matchup against the Broncos, and DTR was looking for him last week. 15 targets, at least according to DraftKings. Haven't checked the PFF on that one. But, if I'm going to be using a Browns pass catcher, he's probably my favorite in this matchup based on the way DTR was looking for him. Kyle Pitts remains cheap here at this 4K number. Throw your hands up in the air at this point with Kyle Pitts, right? From there, don't have that much interest in a lot of these other guys. Kate Otten can make your pool. I guess Chika Conquo can make your pool. If the Eagles guys are out, they can make your pool. Pat Freiermuth can definitely make your pool. As someone that obviously he's going to be still eased in, but 2,900 is far too cheap for the talent that Pat Freiermuth is in. Maybe with the new offensive coordinator, we get Kenny Pickett going more a little bit here. Michael Mayer also, I think, underpriced there at 2,800 already. That will do it for our Week 12 Sunday slate first look. Check out everything we have going on at Establish the Run. Go watch the replays of Establish the Show that just happened right before this for the Thanksgiving slate. Establish the Million that happened last night for the Thanksgiving slate. And of course, we'll be back post-Thanksgiving for everything else regarding this main slate. But at least hopefully this gets your mind ready, thinking for not only tomorrow and turkey and beers and family and football and fun, which I hope you guys all have the best Thanksgiving possible, but also for Sunday because it's still a big 10-game fun main slate that we should start thinking about if we want to take DFS seriously. So wish you all the best of luck. I appreciate you all tuning in. Seriously, have the happiest Thanksgiving. I appreciate all of you so much for tuning in to this show and everything else that I'm doing and we're doing at ETR. Can't thank you all enough. Very thankful for everyone out there. I'm going to go transition myself to the NBA streets with a 14-gamer before NFL. Encourage you guys all to go to establishthorun.com. Check out our NBA subscribe page if it's something that you might be interested in. We are by far best in class at everything going on, NBA DFS, NBA props. I can promise you that. Okay. Thank you guys for tuning in. Best of luck here in Week 12.